Hello. Communication is defined as a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. A simple way of putting this is information communicated between two parties. Now, our study of communication is often limited to our understanding of communication as a spoken or written exchange. But what we don't often consider is the particularly significant role of music in communication. The goal of my presentation is to explain why music is essential to the world of communication, because it has the potential to bridge cultural, social, political, and other gaps. Music is not unlike other types of communication in its structure. Music is a form of nonverbal communication, and it involves an exchange of nonverbal messages between two parties, typically the artist and the listener, or the audience in some cases. One thing that sets music apart from other forms of communication is that the language of music is universal and has existed in every culture throughout history. The language of music is made up of a series of musical sounds and rhythms and is notated onto paper and transformed into sound by musical instruments. Cultures are formed over time by things like ancestry, religion, and shared traditions, but language also plays a significant role in group formation. The role of music in group formation is significant, yet it is often disregarded. Every culture involves music in some way. Often, music is deeply tied to culture's religious and spiritual expressions and helps to connect individuals through their beliefs, traditions, and practices. I was inspired by the potential of music and communication in my research and presentation. Music has the potential to bridge cultural gaps and begin the process of healing and reconciliation, but unfortunately, we have failed to realize and understand this. I was inspired by musicologist Derek Cook in his book, The Language of Music. In this book, Cook discusses how our views of music have changed over the years. Cook believes that music is widely regarded nowadays not as a language at all, but as a pure, inexpressive art. And even those who do feel it to be some kind of language regard it as an imprecise one, incapable of conveying anything so tangible as an experience of life or an attitude towards it. But to fully unlock the potential of music as a communication tool, we need to keep both of these things in mind. We must realize that music is an expression of art and beauty, but it is also a language and a communication tool. Music at its core is a human expression of emotion, and it can display an array of emotions, from anger and deep sorrow to great joy and anticipation. Music possesses the unique ability to break down language and cultural barriers because of its ability to foster understanding and empathy among groups. Now, while spoken language and speech can also be incredibly effective at transferring ideas and messages, music has this unique ability to bring people together and initiate conflict solving through a vulnerable display of emotion. The language of music is a universal language that anyone can access, not limited to culture, level of education, or even level of ability. For my senior research project, I was inspired by the Let's Talk Music model of music communication that was proposed by Avi Galboa and Bassam Salman in their research study. They observed music as a method of communication among the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The participants, both Israeli and Palestinian, engaged in collaborative music-making activities like songwriting and musical improvisation, both tasks that encouraged teamwork and empathy. The goal of Gilboa and Salman's study was to determine the role of music as a communicator, specifically music's role in solving serious conflicts between cultural groups. What they found through their Let's Talk Music model was that individuals with no prior music skills could communicate with each other through music, and that these interactions proved beneficial in aiding conflict resolution. Gilboa and Salman defined 6 distinctive roles of music based on the results of their study and participant feedback. These roles are the potential to enhance musical capabilities, to express feelings, to develop togetherness, to get acquainted with the other, to raise political issues, and create a distraction from inconvenient content. Now, I was inspired to create my own musical composition, and one that followed the model and these rules proposed by Salman and Gilboa. And I combine musical elements from two cultures with a deep history of conflict. My first thought was to combine an indigenous folk song with the classical music elements common to the music of their European colonizer. In my case, I chose a melody from the Passamaquoddy community of native Northeast America, and I intertwined it with a classically European-inspired melody that I created. I chose instruments reminiscent of each culture as to highlight a juxtaposition between each culture that I represented. In my research on the Passamaquoddy people, I found that their homeland was where Maine and New Brunswick, Canada are now. The Passamaquoddy people were one of the last remaining tribes in the Northeast region, and they even supported the colonists in the Revolutionary War with the understanding that the colonists would let them keep their land, but this turned out to be nothing more than a false promise. Song and dance play a significant role in the Passamaquoddy's political, religious, and social life. Rarely performed for their own sake, traditional songs help celebrate the coming together of the entire community, whether it be the inauguration of the tribal council or a community supper or reunion. Music is a way that the Passamaquoddy tribe have held on to their language and have stayed united even through attempted exile and erasure. The population of their tribe today is only around 3,600 people, and only 12% are fluent speakers of their language. But music remains to be a huge part of their culture today. The Passamaquoddy tribe is determined to keep their culture alive through music, and this has been encouraged through the passing down of traditional folk songs like this one, the Song of Greeting, and traditional instruments. The Song of Greeting I selected to incorporate into my song because this song is performed at the beginning of every tribal ceremony and pretty much every dinner for the Passamaquoddy tribe. And I just felt that this was the perfect song that I should start my song with. So in my creative process, I took inspiration from the instruments from the Passamaquoddy tribe, as well as their traditional styles of melody. I incorporated a lot of their percussion, like bells and like a big rhythm, and also some inspiration from the vocal chanting and the wind flute. And I also took inspiration from their style by creating a single melodic line to start my song with, which you guys will hear. And I also wanted to incorporate a heavy drum beat. And I also incorporated elements with the European classical period. I was inspired by composers like Mozart, Bach, and Haydn, and I wanted to include a contrasting melody and rhythm, but also a homophonic structure to kind of round it out. And I also wanted to incorporate classical period instruments like woodwinds, strings, and piano, as well as more rhythm like timpani. All right, and now we'll take a listen to it. So I begun the piece with flute, and basically I added in bells and rhythm from there. Oh, now it's working. And then I skipped here to measure 40 to show you guys where I entered into the classical section. And there's where I added in the violin and the cello and the oboe. And then I added in more piano to kind of support that as well and kind of bring it into more of the classical era. And then I continued that with the classical melody. And then I added back in the rhythm and then the bells to kind of bring it back into the first section. And then to round it all out at the end, I brought back out the flute as more of the prominent melody and then transitioned back into the original melody from the Indigenous song. And that's where I ended. Thank you.